Welcome back, everyone. I hope you're doing well. We are continuing the Hannibal series, of course. We just saw the destruction of Cannae. It was impossible to bear witness to that destruction of a huge Roman army, the likes that the world has never seen. Now, what will happen next? Well, join me and let's find out.
Outnumbered mercenaries had destroyed the majority of the largest army Rome had ever put to field, marking this as one of the bloodiest military encounters ever fought. For the Romans, Cannae became the benchmark by which subsequent defeats were measured.
Yeah. That means you can't get much worse than this.
It would not be surpassed for another 600 years.
Whoa.
The dazed survivors of the Roman army dispersed. Varro resurfaced in Venusia, in charge of as little as 70 horsemen who escaped the pursuing Numidians.
Jeez.
In Canusium, a certain 19-year-old tribune by the name of Publius Scipio, together with 3 other tribunes, gathered a larger group of some 3,000 men. Despite barely escaping the carnage, the young tribune was notable for inspiring the troops, going as far as threatening to kill those who spoke about fleeing and forcing the men to take an oath never to betray Rome.
We saw this before in the Samnite War. Never giving up.
In the days that followed, up to 10,000 survivors would converge on Canusium, and Varro would resume command. The question was, what would Hannibal do now?
I mean, yeah, like, first off, rest, but then what? March on Rome? Demand? Who knows? Love HistoryMarche. Go give them a subscribe if you haven't already. Great series. Amazing series.
This video is sponsored by 2000.
Such a good series.
In massive damage for ending itself in a. The Carthaginians were.
Oh. This is where we're starting. Whoa.
A day after the battle, the Carthaginians were still plundering the 2 enemy camps, taking 19,300 prisoners. Hannibal saw to the burial of his fallen troops and gave Paulus a proper burial. But the dead Roman soldiers were left to rot in the sun.
The smell, unbearable.
While more than 50,000 men lay dead or dying in the plain below, the Carthaginian leadership met at a villa in Cannae. Visibly exhausted, they were in disagreement. Hannibal and some of his officers wanted to rest the army and prepare for the campaign in southern Italy. Maharbal, a prominent cavalry commander, was among those who wanted to march on Rome without delay. Proclaiming, perhaps enthusiastically, that he would lead the Numidians to the capital in 5 days, he protested to Hannibal, "Truly the gods do not give everything to the same man. You know how to win a victory, Hannibal, but you do not know how to use one."
Basically saying, of course, you know how to complete the tactics to get us to the victory. However, you don't know how to capitalize on that victory. You don't know how to continue putting pressure on the enemy. You instead just go to the next thing, which we've seen. And the one thing Hannibal has is he has the ability to win. But we've seen time and time again that he hasn't tried to put pressure after facts. Like, for example, right when he could have marched on Rome at least twice now. Now, this is the 3rd time he could have marched on Rome. He is not electing to do that, though.
Whether or not these words were truly spoken, the reality was that Rome was 400 kilometers away. Another long march, after a grueling campaign had just ended, would be disastrous. Furthermore, the Senate adopted emergency measures to raise 4 legions in the coming weeks.
So we got recalled troops, 17 years old, or this conscription date. Some slaves, criminals that are pardoned, to make sense of this. temples stripped of war trophies to equip their recruits, religious rituals to bolster morale, human sacrifice. Why are we sacrificing people? That's weird. We need people at this point. Public mourning, forbidden to contain the panic. Gates guarded to prevent people from fleeing Rome. Oh my goodness. So we are like in martial law times 1,000 right now.
Slaves and boys as young as 16 or 17 were conscripted. While insufficient for a pitched battle, these troops would be enough to man the walls of Rome. Praetor Marcus Claudius Marcellus, previously tasked with reinforcing Sicily, was now sent to bolster the confidence of allies in Campania and wait for the wreck of the army of Cannae to join him.
Okay.
If he were to march on Rome, Hannibal would be placing himself between two Roman armies and would need to fend off relief forces that the Senate would muster over the coming months. To overcome the enemy's vast manpower, Hannibal had hoped for reinforcements from Iberia, but thus far the Scipio brothers had kept Hasdrubal at bay.
Yeah, that's the front that's kind of like not thought about a lot, is the Iberian front, with the Ebro River being kind of like that makeshift border between Roman influence to Carthaginian influence. And it seems that the Scipio brothers, as of right now, are keeping the Iberian ally or / Carthaginians at bay, to where they're not imposing a threat from both sides. They're keeping a singular front within the Italian peninsula. And still, though, they're having issues.
Worse, Carthaginian Senate's planning and logistics left much to be desired. Troops in Spain and Italy were mostly paid by the Bacchid family silver. Very little financial support came from Carthage itself thus far.
For what reason, though? I've never understood this. If you guys can let me know. But it seems that Carthage doesn't even recognize the Barca military, like, faction as part of their own in the same regard.
This disjointed system was detrimental to the war effort, and in stark contrast to the better organized Roman Senate that strived to secure funding and logistical support for its army and navy in all theaters. So far, the only attempt to supply Hannibal was a fleet of 70 ships that roamed the waters of northern Italy in the aftermath of the Battle of Trasimene in 217. But lack of coordination prevented them from making contact, and many of these ships had since been captured near the port of Cosa.
Jeez.
Confronted by these problems, Hannibal knew that despite his ability to outwit and surprise his opponents, his army would not endure the many corrosive years in the field without reinforcements and logistical support. The decision not to march on Rome was sound. While the situation in southern Italy remained uncertain, another Roman army advanced north to punish the tribes of Cisalpine Gaul for siding with Hannibal.
Is this really the time to let pride take its place here? Or is it to thwart potential communication and allies in the future? If it's the latter, go for it. If it's not, what are we doing? We're just sacrificing resources to something that we can kick the can down the road for, we can kick this can down the road, I would say, for Rome. Maybe it's an important theater to attack. I wouldn't say so, but I might not have all the context.
The expedition was launched just days after the main army went on its way to Cannae, as part of the Senate's plan to destroy all enemies in the Italian peninsula in one massive counterattack.
Okay.
Commanded by Lucius Postumius Albinus, the Romans marched through the Silva Litana forest, some 120 kilometers northwest of Ariminum. Albinus was a Roman politician and a veteran general. By now a man in his late 50s, he spent the last 10 years in retirement, but was recalled into service during this time of crisis. He was given 2 legions and had recruited allied troops, mustering a 25,000-strong army. With reports of enemy presence further north, Albinus expected to confront the tribesmen in the Po Valley. But the main Boii force was much closer. They secured the perimeter along the enemy's line of march. The Gauls had cut into the trees in such a way that they would remain standing without assistance, but would topple over if given a slight shove.
That's so smart.
As the column advanced further along the woodland road, the tribesmen pushed the trees onto the enemy.
Damn.
The trees...
This is going to create confusion. And remember, Rome is built on discipline. This is probably going to invoke panic to create that discipline, or create some sort of like earthquake or ripple through their discipline.
Fell on each other and crashed onto the road from both sides, killing Roman soldiers and horses and destroying equipment. Most of Albinus's men died under the weight of the tree trunks and thick branches. The Boii waiting in the forest moved in on the panicked survivors. Roman resistance was fiercest in the vanguard, but elsewhere the encounter became a one-sided slaughter. Albinus fought to avoid capture, but was killed and decapitated. According to legend, his head was later taken to a Boii sacred temple, where the skin was scraped off and the bare skull was covered with gold. It was used as a cup for drinking.
So many people do that in history. It's weird. It's so weird, man, to drink from your enemy's head.
By the tribe's high priest. A contingent of Roman veterans at the head of the column tried to escape across a river, but were captured by the Boii, who had already taken the bridge over it. Can we just appreciate how masterclass this ambush was? Probably one of the best ambushes I've ever witnessed on a historical documentary like this. Few Roman prisoners were taken. The Boii also took a vast amount of loot, with the Roman goods handily concentrated along the forest road. Of the 25,000 Romans, only 10 men survived the battle.
Lucky 10? My God. God dang. So Cannae and this. What? This is a mini Cannae. We cannot. All right. Let's unpack real quick. There was like 50,000 Romans dead in Cannae, right? Something like that. 50, 60, somewhere in there. This is literally half that. That's a mini Cannae. Let's not. I've never heard. Oh my God. Oh my God. These sources of numbers are true. This is just as effective, or even more effective, than the Cannae attack, because the loss of life on the Boii was probably minimal compared to the loss of life of the Carthaginians. My God.
Reports of the annihilation in Silva Litana came mere days after the catastrophe at Cannae. A panic hit the city of Rome.
They're probably thinking
the Senate ordered
days.
aediles to patrol the streets, open shops, and disperse any sign of defeatism. However, all offensive operations against the Gauls were suspended indefinitely.
Good.
Varro was now sent to levy new troops for the defense of Picenum and Etruria, where he would remain in command of up to 2 legions and an equal number of allied troops for several years. Across the Mediterranean, in Iberia, the Romans fared better. Hasdrubal Barca managed to reorganize his forces after the defeat at the Ebro in 217, and, after receiving a contingent of 4,000 infantry and 1,000 cavalry from Africa,
well, there you go, they're getting some support.
He decided to close the distance against the Scipio brothers. But some of the officers that he punished and imprisoned for cowardice after the Ebro debacle had escaped back to their homes among the Tertessian people. They instigated a revolt and captured the city of Asqua, which held a large Carthaginian depot for grain and other supplies. Reluctantly, Hasdrubal had to move south and abandon plans to advance across the Ebro in 216. All reports suggested that the uprising had the potential for spreading beyond the Tartessi territory. This would destabilize Carthaginian rule in Iberia, damage Hasdrubal's supply lines, and endanger the safety of the rich copper and silver mines that were vital for the war effort. Hasdrubal met Calbo in battle and made short work of the rebel army, despite their large numbers. Around this time, he received news of the victory at Cannae and was ordered by the Carthaginian Senate to march his army to Italy as soon as he could. But he was now too far south, and his army needed rest. Most he could do is reach the Ebro River before the onset of winter, but it was too late to campaign against the Romans. For the older Scipios, this was a window of opportunity they would not miss. Previously, except for a brief expedition south of the Ebro, they largely stayed north of the river, weary of Hasdrubal's generalship and the vast resources he had at his disposal. But, taking advantage of the Carthaginian general's absence, the Scipios negotiated an alliance with some of the Celtiberian tribes. In addition...
Which of course is going to put even more pressure on this particular hypothetical campaign that wants to be taking place.
They enlisted many mercenaries from their ranks and began preparations to push south across the Ebro next spring. Back in southern Italy, a Macedonian delegation was heading towards the Italian coast. Upon hearing of Hannibal's victory at Cannae, Philip V of Macedon wanted to propose an alliance with the Carthaginian general. His ambassadors joined Hannibal at his camp. The negotiations would drag on until next summer. And the situation in Italy would change dramatically over the coming months.
Wow. Wait. Yeah. Wow. That's it though. That's it on today. Let's reflect real quick. So the Boii tribe basically had a mini Cannae or Cannae. Like I said, 24,990 people getting sacrificed. One of your leading general becoming a cup. That's pretty devastating. I would say that's even, in some lights, even more devastating than Cannae, just given the numbers that were lost versus the numbers that the enemy lost. On the Iberian front, it seems like the Scipio brothers are pretty much keeping everything at bay, and now there's revolts happening either in south of the Ebro or west in Iberia, which is going to cause more logistical and interesting issues for Hasdrubal as he tries to muster up the courage to create a similar campaign that Hannibal did to get to northern Italy. So would he have to cross the Alps? Would he have to do something else? I'm not sure. What I do know is there is so much panic happening in the Italian peninsula right now, whether it be through Rome, seeing these two horrible defeats, or the countryside not knowing whether to stay or flee, or to partner with Carthage or to stay home with Rome. And if you do partner with Carthage, are you ousted? Are you even killed by defecting? And now the Macedonians over here trying to play partnership with Carthage to see what they can get out of this deal. What an interesting turn of events that have happened over the last few episodes, specifically the turmoil that's happened in Rome. So much that Carthage they're not putting the pressure. That's the issue though. Like, Carthage is chilling. And when I say Carthage, the city of Carthage, the administration of Carthage, they're not putting the relative pressure that's needed on the sea, on Rome, on their allies to really bring this one home. They're really just thinking they have a layup here with Hannibal, given the track record, obviously. Super interesting, as we shall continue soon. Thank you guys so much for watching. Yeah, that's all we got here. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll see you guys next time. Peace out. Bye-bye.